Hey, everybody. Oh my God. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this special live that I've been really wanting to do this live, and I'm super excited that I finally got Skye. It's my fault because I've been dragging my feet because I just have so much going on here. But that being said, I think a lot of you in the chat already know who she is. And so I don't want to sort of overstep her I want her to introduce herself. But before I do that, thanks for liking, subscribing, being part of this channel. As you know, I'm getting demonetized like all the time now. It's kind of funny, but I'm not stopping and none of us are going to stop. And so with all your guys' support, we can just keep pushing forward and getting these messages out there. So today we're going to have an awesome conversation of transsexualism, our places in this specific conversation. And so with that, hi, Skye. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Buck. I'm excited to be here. And YouTube, please do not demonetize this. This is very important.
Right on. Thank
But
you.
for anyone that doesn't know, my name is Skye Vitiritti. I am on YouTube. Buck has the link down in the description because my last name is impossible to spell.
Totally.
I am a transsexual post-op woman. I have been transitioned for over 20 years.
Wow.
I'm a veteran, an author. I am passionate about trans issues, about women's rights issues, about social issues. And I like to approach things kind of like with an analytical, kind of nonpartisan, nuanced kind of
Yeah.
style. So that's kind of my approach to things. So
Great.
that's kind of my introduction.
It's why I love you. I think you're so awesome. You're really smart. You really bring some more real stability to the conversation, for a lack of a better word. I think stability is good. You really bring um you just bring a real clarity and a real lived, they love to use that lived experience. I hate it, but you do. You 20 years. I didn't realize you were 20 years transitioned. Wow.
2003, June 2003.
Fantastic. You look amazing. You seem so grounded. I mean, to me, use the word pass, but I don't think, do you ever get harassed or do people ever say anything to you
So in my day-to-day life, no.
outside in
It's
the real
only
world? You mean
it's
the
it's
real?
only online. It's only online, and even then, the worst they do is they're like, "You're a man," and I go, "I'm biologically male, I don't care." As long as you get like I tell people all the time, I'm just me. If you get my name right, that's all I care about.
Genius.
Pronouns, whatever, I don't care about that,
That's right.
so
See, we're old school like that. That's what people really have to see. The actual real transsexual people. You know what? Call me she all you want. If that really gets you off, I'm not. I'm not part of that. But I think the groundedness in you. I think that's really also what I'm trying to say. And I think the age that we have under our belts, really coming to this in a time where we did fight to get to these spaces, and I feel like the newer generation is sort of trying to kick up dirt to create something that isn't really there on some level.
well, I think one of the things with the younger generation is that there's a split between the two. And there's part of the younger generation that is like us, and
Yeah.
they're getting drowned out by a lot of the louder
Great.
voices that are not like us. And
Great.
that louder voices that are drowning out the people that are like us are the people that are just causing all the chaos. And what I think is happening is the people that are causing the chaos inside that kind of community there, they're drowning out the more moderate voices.
Great.
And that's the problem. So it's not,
Yeah.
I don't think it's generational. I think it may be more
Mm,
chronically online or
mm.
more just kind of ideological in a ways. And then I think this is where the trans ideology label comes from, as
Yes.
opposed to just being transgender, because I
Mm.
believe there are still transsexuals and transgender people, but I think there's this ideology that is capturing people who wouldn't have been part of this conversation,
Mm. Yeah.
and they're hijacking it right now. And
Yeah.
that's the bigger problem. At least that's the way I'm seeing it.
No, no, I think
Um,
you're right. I think you just worded it different than me. I'm the guy who's just like, clowns are taking it, and you're like more, that's your, I think, really just maybe being a vet. I want to first, before we move forward here on, because I have so many things to talk to you about. I really want to talk a little bit about your background and
yeah,
transitioning and also being a vet. Wow, this is awesome. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like maybe a little bit about your childhood, then into
sure,
getting into the
sure.
military. Yeah.
Yeah, so mom, I was born in the late 70s, grew up in the 80s. My parents realized when I was very young that
Mm,
I had something mentally wrong with me. We didn't know what it
mm,
was.
mm.
My mother caught me um, basically trying to remove my genitalia with scissors in the
Oh,
bathroom when I
wow.
was a toddler. So
Wow.
this led to a lot of visits with mental health doctors and
Mhm.
stuff throughout my childhood. And
Okay.
so it came out that they thought that I was going to be most likely homosexual,
Mhm.
because I had some predilections. I was very effeminate.
Mhm.
And so we thought that, I was most likely going to be homosexual.
Mhm.
And so that's just kind of where it was. Eventually, we realized that that wasn't the case. And a medical transition later in life was the right path.
Mhm.
And we got over body dysmorphia, which was the biggest hurdle because I kept wanting to remove my genitalia.
Yeah.
But I had this chronic thing in my head, and I describe it on my channel quite frequently as basically like Sam Beckett from Quantum Leap. And
Mm.
that's this chronic, and I still deal with it, where I see myself in my head, in my eyes, in the reflection as one person. But
Mhm.
when I capture myself in a mirror, in a reflection, in the glass, in a camera, I see a different person. But
Yeah.
that's the way the world sees me. And it's very much like Sam Beckett in Quantum Leap, where
Wow.
he's always jumping into someone else, except that's my lived experience every day.
Mhm.
And so after years of therapy, we couldn't get my brain and body to match. I wanted to get my brain to match. I
Yeah.
wanted to stay male because that's who I was. It didn't work. So we went down the other path. We realized that this was the path that was going to work for me, was getting my body in alignment. And all of my other behaviors and everything just happened to coincide with the assumed gender that I went with because it was already in my head based on what I perceive myself biologically. So a detransition for me, if you cut my hair, I'm
Yeah.
going to have a mental problem. But
Right.
I have breasts, even if you take away my HRT, I've had the bottom surgery. So
Yeah.
I don't have the genitalia. So a lot of those key elements are already there. So what does a
Right.
detransition look like? This
Mm.
is where I start talking about what is trans and what's not. And for me, that's where I'm at.
How
I'm
old were you
I'm
when you
unique.
started? How old were you when
Uh,
you started the medical transition?
when I started therapy specifically
Yeah.
for transitioning,
Uh-huh.
I was 21. I
Okay.
started hormones at 23.
Wow.
And
Okay.
then we started all of the name changes and everything. That started at 24.
Great.
And by 25, I was considered fully transitioned with the exception of bottom surgery. And I
Okay.
put that off until I was about mid 30s. And that was mostly for financial reasons because
Sure.
I self financed everything. I did not
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I saw it as this is my journey, this is my mental health problem, this is my responsibility, and
Yeah.
it's no one else's burden.
Great.
I need to carry this. And that was my mentality. But that
Yeah.
might just be old school 70s mentality. I'm going to mute myself for 1 second. My dogs are making a ruckus.
That dog's going. Well, while you do that, I'm going to tell you that I self-financed everything. I still do, and I could easily get insurance, but I also feel it's my responsibility as an adult to just take charge of my own life. And I don't want to burden the system with my own desire to transition medically. So, I think that's the other thing a lot of people don't understand is that this desire to get everything paid for. Is a gift, and I think some people have lose gratitude for this gift of being, so I think, again, I can see a real difference in an older school or an older generation of people coming to this in a way that you want to take full responsibility for your actions, and you don't want anybody to. So it's sort of like, for myself, I don't like borrowing things from people, right? I just don't like doing that because I don't want to be responsible for somebody else's bicycle or car, right? I want to have all my own stuff. That way, if anything happens to it, so I feel like that's how you did with your transition.
Yeah, it's just the self responsibility is one of the things that my parents instilled on me. Just
Great.
I guess it's part of the
Great.
latchkey generation, being the
Yeah.
oldest child, maybe being
Yeah.
responsible for raising my brothers.
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
that's part of just the generation we grew up with. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm a little bit younger than you.
I'm
I'm
way
not
older than you.
62.
I'm
I am not
62.
60. I'm
You're
45.
yeah,
So,
you're young. You're like the same age as my partner. So
yeah,
yeah,
so
so I'm
like I said,
62.
A little bit younger.
Yeah. Right on. But that being said, transition wise, I think we're in this more older. And when I speak of that, I don't speak necessarily of birth age. I speak of transition age and this, desire to, come to it in a different way. And so did you find that getting to these therapists? So you said certain things that are very interesting to me, that when you were younger, you were a feminine guy. And, people thought you were going to be homosexual. Did you ever enter that space of homosexuality?
So I tried. So I can find men sexy. I can find lots of men attractive. I still find men attractive. I just don't
Sure.
find them sexually attractive.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
find them physically desirous,
Yeah.
and that's just always been the case. And so
Wow.
it's just that's just kind of been the line. And so it was just like, okay, there were lots of hot guys.
Yeah.
Lots of hot guys were interested in me. I just
Sure. No, it's
never.
not in you. That's what I'm saying. Sexuality is literally wired. When they go when you don't date a trans woman, you're transphobic. I'm like, what? That is actually insane. You're telling people to change their sexual wiring. Like that's really on some level homophobic. And it actually is really bizarre to me that people wouldn't see that as sort of like conversion therapy on right because when you would say we're gay back and they tried to convert you, no, you gotta like girls, or you gotta like, if you're a man, you gotta like girls, and they would try to convert. It's the same thing to me when people do stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the, I have people tell me all the time, "Oh, you went to all these therapists. They had to try and groom you or convert you and all this stuff." And I'm like, "No."
No.
Most of the time when I was a kid, we sat around and we just played like Don't Crack the Ice or Hungry Hungry
Right.
Hippos, and we literally just talked. And they'd
Right.
be like, "Oh, we're gonna paint today. Tell me what you're feeling." And that was
Great.
literally therapy. And I'm like,
That's right.
and then they wrote down on the paperwork that you have, transsexualism,
Hmm.
homosexuality, follow up as an adolescent. And that
Hmm.
was the diagnosis under the DSM-3 and then DSM-4.
Right.
And that's what I was diagnosed under. And I had transitioned under that. So,
See the difference, everybody, of that's exactly what my therapist did. I started going to therapy at 16. So that being said, the same thing. They didn't tell you, "Oh, you're gay or you're trans or you're, or pushing you into this, space with just one session of therapy like, "Oh, yep, you have gender dysphoria after one session." It was like, and they never said it. They never said that stuff to me. They just talked to me like you just said, or we had conversations about how I felt or what was happening today at school, or you know what I mean? And then they really created a diagnosis through going back and figuring, listening to you as a youngster and stuff you were struggling with. When did you get into the military? What age?
I joined the military in 2000.
Oh, wow.
So I joined in 2000, and a lot of people think that I joined as part of the whole be a boy, toughen stuff up. But actually, I joined the military as more of I was homeless and started
Oh,
working a job at Arby's,
okay.
and I wanted to go to college, and a recruiter came through and was like, would you
Yeah,
like to go to college?" And I was like, "I would love to go to college." And he's
right.
like, "Well, the Air Force will pay for it if you enlist." And I said, "Absolutely." And that's why I joined the military, was so I could go to college.
Brilliant.
And then 9/11 happened, and it turned my life upside down in a lot of really interesting ways.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I think 9/11 changed a lot of people's lives
yeah,
in a lot of different ways.
totally.
But
Yeah,
yeah, the military for me was good in a lot of ways because I actually started my transition while I was in the military.
great,
The
great.
military, was still under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but like
Yep, yep.
I went through the legal services. They were like, as long as you don't say these things, if as long as you don't go these
Wow,
places, you can dress. You can't do, you can
wow,
take this amount of hormones. You can't take this much. Like, and this was like, 2003 George Bush era. Keep in mind, like,
wow.
so they were hiding me for a bit, but I eventually did get Don't Ask, Don't Tell. But
And then how long did you serve for?
I served until 2004, so 4 years.
Great. So, but you got in, you did your thing. Um, It wasn't like you were trans in the military, you know what I
No,
mean? Which I
no.
think is the reason a lot of people are having an issue with it. Because I know actually a lot of trans vets, I do, who were in there for a long time. It was just that they kept it on the down low and no one made a big deal about it. You just did your service and you did your job and no one was talking about being trans. And then this whole new generation of we're trans in the military and we're getting all our surgeries paid for. You don't think that's going to piss taxpayers off? Of
So
course.
I've done some videos about that, like with the executive orders and stuff. I
Yeah.
think the get coming in solely to transition, I don't think is the right way to utilize the military.
Yeah.
However, if you're in the military and you're
Yeah.
non-deployable, I
Sure.
don't see a problem with that. But if
Right.
you're going to try to be a deployable readiness state, that's a
Great.
problem because from a logistics a logistics point of view, I now have to account for your medications. I have to account
Yes.
for additional room and board. I have to account for all these additional things. You
That's
have
right.
now created an additional burden for logistics, for
Yes.
supply, for all of these
Yes.
additional things. That is
Yes.
additional planning, that is additional readiness, that is
Mhm.
additional effort. So
Mhm.
you are actually creating a burden to the military in terms
That's
of
right.
operational planning and readiness. And
Mhm.
so it's more than just, oh, we're not hurting anyone. There are actual concerns with trans people
That's
and
right.
their health and the readiness. And so even just from simple as getting HRT, when you're deployed, there are times where you can't even get fresh drinking water.
Sure.
So getting
Sure.
hormones can be a problem. Now, this isn't 100% all of the time, but you do have to plan for worst case scenario because that's what the military is for, the worst case scenario. And I don't think that gets brought up in a lot of these
Right.
conversations
I
when we
agree.
talk about the military. So
Agreed.
if you're going to enlist in the military, I my personal view is I think
Yeah.
come in for the right reason, serve the country. If that's the goal,
Yeah.
fine. But if you're
Yeah.
going to come in solely for transition and that's your goal, I
Yeah.
don't think that's the right goal. And I think that's kind of a slap in the face to a lot of veterans who came and to
Yeah.
people whose families actually lost people
That's right.
serving.
Yeah. Thank you for saying
That's
that.
my opinion. You do not have to agree with me.
No.
And of course, I'm open to the opinions of anyone.
Well, I actually agree with you. I personally don't think a trans person should not be in the military. What I think is it should be personal. We shouldn't have to discuss it. If you can go into the military without making it a big deal, you can serve like everybody else. And what you said, if you're non-deployable, meaning maybe you're staying a stateside and working in the computer space and all of that, then it's fine. But if it becomes this sort of thing that I'm trans, right, and you're joining the military for there is a lot of layers there. And also, why do we have to make such a big deal about you being trans in the military? Like if you just join to join and everything you said, I totally agree with. But the problem, what happened is why people got really pissed off about it was because trans people were just putting their agenda first, right? Trans people need to be join the military. Trans people have always been in the military. They just kept it down low, like just like gay people,
Th-
right?
th-
Exact same.
There
Yes.
absolutely. There were trans
Yes.
people when I came out and talked to legal, there were other trans people in the
Of
military.
course.
There
Of
were other
course.
trans people. There was a
Yes.
small little network. I knew
Yes.
at the time that I was transitioning about 4
Yes.
other people, and we were all in contact with each other in like this underground kind of network that
Yeah.
we were all kind of talking with each other. We knew who
Yeah.
each other were. So it
Yes.
wasn't like a secret, but it was secret, you know?
Just like
But
being gay. You don't think being gay back in the day when you couldn't talk about same thing.
oh,
You
yeah.
couldn't talk about being gay in the military. I mean, I
No.
I even think I always known people who have been gay in the military, especially females, not so much males. They kept it on the down low, right? Because they just for many reasons, but at the same time, even now that you can be openly gay, I guess in the military, they're not running around. They're not running around waving the gay flag. On some level. It's the flags and the pins and all the weird stuff feels so weird.
Yeah, I don't have a trans flag anywhere in this house. I had a pillow that someone bought me and my dogs destroyed it. Uh
Genius.
but yeah, there's no pride stuff
Because
here.
it's just I
I
mean
think
that
the closest I think the closest thing I have is maybe Blair White's signed poster from her tour she went
Her
on in
tour.
last year.
Yeah, I did part of her. I did her Arizona. I came
I
in
know,
as
I
a guest
know.
in
I
Arizona.
actually met her on my birthday and a couple of people who were
Oh,
in your chat. So
great.
that
Yeah, they
was
love
well,
you.
my
The
birthday.
chat
It was my
loves
birthday
you.
present. Yeah,
That's so
it was
great.
very
Yeah,
fun.
Blair is a very dear friend of mine. You know, I very much have her back. I will not let people can say whatever they want about Blair. I know her personally. I've spent personal time without all of this with her. She's a sweet, lovely, amazing human being who cares. She cares. And you know, it's because of Blair that I do this. Honestly, I would have never been doing this YouTube channel if it wasn't for me seeing Blair sort of getting piled on. And I just felt this need at one time to just start stepping up and doing this work. Let's talk about you and your channel and what got you sort of motivated to start doing this. I call work because it is work.
It's a lot of work. I got motivated to do it because tickle versus giggle.
Oh,
I was
genius.
so annoyed by that entire
Yeah,
situation. It was just frustrating that
yeah.
an entire biological sex could be written out under law in Australia,
Mhm.
and it was almost like no one really cared.
Yeah,
Like, there are
totally.
no specific female rights anymore in Australia. When
Ooh,
you look at the law now, because of that ruling, there is no female sex based law in Australia. Any male can go into Australia, declare themselves female under self ID,
uh-huh.
go into the departments,
Mhm,
update their documentation.
mhm,
They can get their documentation updated to say that they are female, and they
mhm.
are now legally female and entitled to all the same rights and freedoms as any other female,
Wow,
regardless of any transition, medical diagnosis, or anything. Self
wow.
ID has allowed predators, it has allowed con men, it has allowed grifters, it has allowed just horrible, horrible people to take
Yeah,
advantage. And
yes.
I don't think that was the intention of Roxanne Tickle. I think Roxanne Tickle just wanted a payday. I think that's what she wanted.
You
I think
said
she
it.
wanted money,
That's right.
but that's my opinion.
Yep.
But in Australia, it's disturbing that females lost all of their rights and no one seems to bat an eye. And if it could happen
I know.
there, it could happen anywhere.
Totally,
And
totally.
it was really that moment that I realized that I was very much aligned with a lot of the more gender critical side of the
Yes.
trans ideological movement because I didn't agree with what was happening with that trans ideology, different from the transgender people that
Mhm,
you and I both know and the
mhm,
trans community that we had existed in for so long.
mhm.
And again, there is a difference between the ideology of trans women are women versus trans women are biological males with a mental health condition that are trying to look as close to biologically as female possible without being biologically female.
Great.
Um, I am a transsexual woman. That's who I am. And I'm sorry to any biological female who is upset that I use the word woman to describe
Yeah,
myself. Okay.
yeah.
That's I don't know how else to describe myself. Feminized male just doesn't sound right to me. And I know I'm not a
No.
man because I don't know anything about being a man. I'm sorry. I don't. That would be like me walking up to my mom and calling her dad. She doesn't know anything about being my dad. So I apologize. But it hurt. It hurt because I thought about my mom and my grandmother and the stuff that they fought for. Because my mom
Yeah,
was taught me a lot about like third wave feminism.
yeah.
My grandmother was second wave feminism. So they were
Mhm.
very powerful women. My grandmother was one of the World War II. She was one of the
Wow.
what are they? Oh gosh, the female the female the oh
Oh,
god,
ones that were working, like, in the factory or
not the factories. She was one of the engineers that worked on the
oh,
bases. She was
like a wa
repairing
were
planes
those
and stuff.
WACs? Women Army Corps? No, the
I keep
there is a
WAFs, something
wa
like that.
yeah,
Women Air Command, Women
yeah,
Army
Women Army
Current, something like
Corps,
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
something like
something
yeah, they
like
called them
yeah.
WACs, I
But she
think,
was
yeah,
basically like a in the military kind of. But
yeah.
yeah, it was fantastic. So they instilled a lot of that into me, and so I
Yeah.
have this deep, deep respect
Great.
for all of this, and I'm just
Thank you.
it hurt, and so I
Yeah.
made my channel, and I think my first couple videos were about Tickle versus Giggle
Mhm.
and, Through the Looking Glass, which is an amazing documentary about
Mhm.
trans widows, and if you
Yes.
have not seen that,
It's so
I
good.
talk about trans widows a lot, which is something that a lot of trans people will not even touch. They won't even acknowledge they exist. But trans widows, trans orphans, if you're not familiar with that concept, a trans widow or a trans orphan, that is the spouse or child of a transsexual or transgender person who
Yeah.
transitions while they're still married or a parent and
Mhm.
essentially abandons their family for
Wow.
their typically an autogynephilic fetish. It's typically the more
Yes.
fetishistic side of
Mhm.
the AGP. Not all
Mhm.
AGPs are fetishists.
No.
Okay, there are non-AGP fetishists, or not all AGPs are fetishists, but all fetishists are AGP. So
That's right. That's
there is
right.
a distinction. So, um, but yeah, there's and then I talked a lot about my own experiences. Would I have been a trans kid? Because my
Mhm.
parents have told me they would have medically transitioned me in today's climate, and I'm thankful they
Wow.
didn't.
Thank
You
God.
know,
Oh
so
my God.
these are some of my early videos that I started on the channel because I didn't
Great.
really know where I was going with it. I was just angry,
Yeah.
so angry at just the direction of the world. And
Yeah.
over time, I've kind of found my voice and just found my where I feel I can make the most difference.
Well,
And
you
I
are by speaking, by literally. First off, thank you for saying that. I have a large female following, and I always acknowledge my biology as a female. And I get what you're saying about calling yourself a trans woman. I think most people are very respectful of that because you're respectful and you acknowledge your biology. And you know what? There's no other way to say it. You and I transitioned to be the opposite sex, though we are not the opposite sex. We look like the opposite sex. And I think when we really say these things to people in a reality based space, okay, not my truth, not yours, the truth is we changed our appearance to look this way, though we did not change our sex. But I think that's why we decided to use the word transsexual, because it is about our sex, and it is about sort of looking the certain way and walking the world a certain way. And I think women will acknowledge you as that person because you're respecting them, and you also have their back. Skye, you have their back. But when you say all these things, tickle versus giggle, which made me want to puke, all of these sports things, all of these idea that trans women are women, and all of these things, which are really, for me, a very misogynistic movement. It shows that not all trans women are those wingnuts, and that you're willing to come to this with a really clear thing of who and what you are, and that you needed to do this in order to be this special human being that you are today.
I just I just knew that it wasn't right what was happening, and
Yeah,
someone had to say something. There wasn't a voice that
yeah,
was saying what needed to be said. The
that's
closest
right.
that I could find that was saying what I was trying to say
Mhm.
would be maybe Brianna Wu, but I don't agree with her on
Me
so
neither.
many
Me
things
neither. Me
because
neither.
she's still pushing for the medicalization of children, and that
That's
is
right.
something that I'm against.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I
Thank you.
understand where she's coming from, and I understand that a lot of people have had facial feminization surgery, which is the biggest one that a lot of them point to. And when I say them, I mean other trans women.
Yeah,
A lot of trans women, older ones, point to facial feminization surgery and their shoulders and a lot of the concerns they had with puberty, and they
yeah,
think that they would have better lives if they hadn't gone through puberty. So they push these blockers onto the children, thinking that it
yeah.
will make those children's lives better. But a lot of these children are not going to end up being trans. And
Exactly.
it's even then, even if you medicalize these children, that's not a guarantee that these children won't end up still having the male developmental because the skull is already developed, that
Yeah,
the bone structure is already there. I
great.
mean, we can take a look at oh gosh, I can't remember
Mhm.
Elon Musk's daughter Vivian. I can't
Sure.
remember her last name. I think it's Waters.
Okay.
But she was medicalized as a
Mhm.
teen, and she has very masculine facial structure still.
Yeah, that's
And so
right.
it didn't work out the way that the
Yeah.
proponents talk. Those puberty blockers, they say that they're fully reversible. They're not.
Nope.
This is Lupron. Lupron is a prostate cancer medication that was
That's right.
prescribed for men in their 50s.
That's
This is
right.
a drug that was used off label in the 80s for
Mm,
precocious puberty.
mhm,
And these women now, who a lot of these women who got it when they were 8 or 9 years old in the
mhm,
80s are
mhm.
now having hip and back fractures because
Yep.
of it. And they are suing them because of it.
Mhm,
So, this Lupron is also used in surrogacy to try
mhm.
and regulate your hormones. And these women who have had surrogate pregnancies in the early 2000s are also having ovarian cancer. They're getting
Wow.
cysts, they're getting uterine cancer. So, and they've
Wow.
used it for chemical castration of
That's right.
inmates in the past. So, this medication that they're saying, it's like they're trying to find a way to utilize this medication
Mhm.
as opposed to actually saying, okay, here's an actual need. But I don't want to medicalize the children. I'm okay with therapy. If you want
Of
to
course. Yeah.
if you want to socially transition a child, I'm fine with that as long
Yeah.
as you're not convincing them that, okay, you're going to be able to socially transition, but you're going to change sex. You're going to be the opposite sex. That's not reality.
Nope.
If you're going to transition, you don't get to suddenly and magically claim all of the rights of the opposite sex.
That's right.
That's not reality. If you socially transition, you don't get to compete in athletics with the opposite sex. If you're a biological male, you don't get to compete in female sports.
That's right.
It's not fair. If you're biologically male, you don't get to go in female locker rooms. That's
That's
not
right.
that's not the way it
Nope.
shouldn't be. And
Well, they're
and that
lying to these
that's it.
kids, which to me, everything you said, I'm in alignment with you 100%. It's just basic reality what you're saying. It's not, there's nothing should be, nothing shocking about what you're saying. There's nothing transphobic about what you're saying. It is reality based, factual information. And it's also very pro trans, what you're saying. When you transition, I always say this, when you transition, you do not get everything you want. This idea that because you're transitioning, now the whole world is your oyster is ridiculous behavior. Number one, you are abusing children, lying to them that they change their sex, right? When you are biologically male. I don't care how many hormones you put in your body or female, whatever. But also I want to say this to you, or if you know, I want to ask you this question, Skye. Do you notice that the majority of the young people, and it's why I disagree with Brianna Wu, because Brianna is coming from a male to female space. And I keep pushing back on her and saying, but why is the majority of the young people who are taking these drugs or who are doing these surgeries are female to male? Do you notice that?
I do. And I think a lot of that is from what I'm seeing and the people that I'm talking to. I think a
Yeah.
lot of it is the way that
Mm.
gender dysphoria is being diagnosed right now because it's
Mm.
so fluid. It's just discomfort with one's body.
That's
Well,
right.
tell me, Buck, what female prepubescent does not have discomfort with their body?
Duh.
What female starting puberty, when you
Mm.
start developing breasts
Mhm.
and you start sweating and you start
Yep.
getting male gazes and male attention
Right.
and your butt starts growing
Mhm.
and you start putting on a little bit more weight and you get acne and you're self-conscious about everything.
Mhm.
Everything is different, you're uncomfortable,
Yeah.
all of these little things. And now you start feeling more powerless
That's
because now this is the age where you start realizing that boys are bigger, boys are stronger, the men are bigger, the men are
mhm.
stronger, the men now they have that
Mhm.
lustful gaze. You are
Yeah.
now a object to them. You stop being on equal things. It's, oh, you're so smart. No, no, now it's, oh, you're so pretty.
Yes.
It's that change.
That's right.
And that testosterone, that's the equalizer. Oh,
Right.
my breasts, they're staring at my breasts. If I get rid of my breasts, then then I'm not a sex object anymore, and men will respect me. They'll
Yes.
respect me because I'm a man, and I
True.
think that's what's happening.
Totally agree with you. I did have a lot of that as a young person, right? I was a total tomboy. I was like a super butch kid, right? I was like athletic girl. I was all of these things. And my parents let me on some way be this little boy, right? But they never once told me I was a boy. I always knew I was a girl. What my dad said was, if you got to be tough, right? You got to fight. I was that fighting. I would literally get in fist fights, like all that. I was that little girl, right? But never once did I think I was a boy. Never once did I think I thought I would like to be a boy, which, never really crossed my wasn't there's no such thing as transitioning back when I grew up. That being said, I am so and then I started to experiment with girls as a gay person at 16 years old, right? So I started to get into that. My sexuality started to really ramp up. It wasn't my gender. I never really focused on my gender. I focused on my sexuality for a very long time of my life, up and probably until my transition time. It's always been more about my sexuality. And then always having this yearning to have this look of being a man. So this is the thing that these young girls are missing out on. They're not being able to sort of experiment with themselves and their sexuality. And maybe because I will guarantee you, mark my words, I say it here all the time, so many of these young girls are going to regret everything they've done to themselves at 16 and 19 years old because they haven't got to experiment being a certain kind of girl, maybe a masculine girl, or just even experimenting with themselves on so many ways. We are rushing them into this space to say, if you cut your boobs off and take testosterone and grow a mustache, your life is going to change, which is a complete total lot. This is, as you and I both know, this is a commitment. You and I have committed to this for the rest of our lives. And I think these kids aren't understanding that, really, that sort of really important part of the commitment to transition.
I think that's accurate. I think that's a good way to put it. I think a lot of them are seeing it as kind of an escape too,
Yes.
because they're seeing this being taught in schools. I never learned I the first time I learned about transition and stuff, I was a
Yeah.
teenager,
Yeah.
and it was
Yeah.
from Jerry
Wow.
Springer. That's the first time I heard the word transsexual was Jerry Springer.
Oh my God,
So
hilarious. I think I was on Jerry Springer. Was it? Yeah, it was Jerry Springer I was on.
So I think that's the first time I had heard it, but I mean, I was familiar with the concept of,
Sure.
of changing,
Yes.
the concept, but
Yes.
it wasn't taught in schools. We weren't taught about being gay, but where are the tomboys? Where are the butch lesbians?
They're
Where
no
are
more.
they?
They're
Where are
not.
the drag kings?
They're not. They're called, you know what they call themselves now? They call themselves trans mask. So they've
Right.
even co-opted the word trans mask. Okay, so those are the ones who aren't so necessarily medicalizing themselves, or maybe just cutting their breasts off, not taking any hormones, not calling themselves trans men or women. They're trans mask. They're all butch girls, and I'm like, it's actually really sad for me as a person who experienced living as a dyke for a long time. And really, I don't discount that part of my life. I really believe that part was so important to me and really gave me a sense of many things in my life, right?
Yeah. I mean, my wife, I've been married to her for 12 years,
Wow,
and,
congratulations.
prior
Great.
to meeting her, she was Gold Star lesbian by her, uh, accounting. She's only ever been attracted to women. Um, so this is I promised everyone for my 1,000 subscribers, I was gonna tell how I met my wife, so
Great.
this is new
You're gonna
information for
get to a
everyone.
thousand. Maybe you'll get
Yeah,
to a
yeah,
thousand from
yeah.
here. Right on.
Yeah, no, easily.
Right
So,
on.
but I met my wife. I was obviously post transition because I met her in 2011, and Gold Star lesbian. She's only dated women. She loves women like Gillian Anderson is like one of her
Yeah.
favorite
Right on.
actresses. Like
Right on.
gorgeous, right?
Mhm.
Um, And so, like, she's always like, "Where are the butch lesbians? Where are the strong women? They're not on TV. They're not
Yeah.
out there anymore.
Good
They're
point.
gone."
Good
And then
point.
I talk to, my gay friends, and they're like, where are the feminine
That's right.
And then I'm like, "Where are the feminine straight guys? Where are the David Bowies?"
Yes. Yes. Even the
And
music wise, you're right. And the music, I don't know if you met him or you don't. I'm older than you. Adamant, David
oh, yeah.
Bowie, like there were even Elton John was, but he's gay. But like the straight,
Yeah.
you're right. The straight, even in rock and roll, right? All the long haired Journey, like all of these rock and roll guys who were super fat. All the long, what do they call them? The long hair rocker dudes from the 80s. They were
Yeah,
all
yeah,
super
the hair
femme.
bands.
The hair bands, they were all femme guys.
Yeah.
You're right.
That's kind of where I say, like, what they did was they took gender and just decided gender is just personality now.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so what they did is they basically took our all of our little sexuality
Mhm,
and orientation kind of
mhm,
stereotypes, and they
mhm.
said, "Okay, you're no longer a butch lesbian. You're now a trans mask, non-bi," and started putting all these weird labels on it and called it a
Mhm.
gender. And
Yes.
now this is a thing, and they're medicalizing it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, my personality is not a commodity. My
Wow.
personality is not trans.
Mhm.
Trans is a mental health condition that I'm dealing
Thank
with.
you.
My
Thank you.
personality is, I'm sorry, I'm a pet mom and I'm someone that talks on the internet.
Right.
And that's just what I my personality is. And when I get done talking with you, I'm gonna go make supper for my family and I'm gonna
Right
feed some
on.
dogs and I'm just gonna go on about my life because my life is not trans. I'm not going to dive into some weird philosophical conversation on some
Yes.
Reddit forum because that's not my life.
But, every again, it just feels so heavy to me that these young people are really getting, and I always go to age because I didn't grow up in this space of social media and having access to it 24/7, but I do have a kid, and that we do put limits. He's not on the internet all day long, right? We have him in sports and doing things and riding his bike outside, and when you're a parent, you also have to make those efforts to take your kid out, right? Because if you just don't make the effort, we're going bike riding to the beach this weekend, or we're going camping next weekend, or we're going, we do these things in order so that he doesn't get cycled into that space. So I also wonder, do you think parents have some responsibility in the fact that their kids are on Reddit all day and night? Because that's in this whole trans bubble has really escalated. TikTok, all of it. These kids are just on there talking about, this is my first day on testosterone. This is my fifth day on testosterone. This is my scars of my chest surgery. I'm like, but what else are you doing, kiddos? So does my question
Well,
sort of make sense?
it does. I think there's a group of parents who are maybe too hands off on their kids,
Yeah.
and they're letting their kids run wild on the internet
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not run wild outside.
Yeah. Right. No, right.
But I think there's
Yeah.
another set of parents that may be a little too more engaged,
Mhm.
and they're pushing the ideology on their children.
Mm.
And you
Right.
covered that yesterday in your
Yes.
video.
Yes.
I mean, two trans kids. I mean, we I
A
mean
whole
we
family, like, the
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 whole
polyamorous family with their kid named, what was it? Sparrow, and I'm just like, "What's happening?"
I mean, both kids, every time they were talking to the camera in the one clip, they kept looking off camera to make sure they didn't say anything wrong and that they was okay.
Oh my
It was
god.
very
God.
disturbing, and there's
Yes.
a lot of clips like that. There's another famous clip where the kid's like, "Oh, my mom says I'm not gay, but my mom says I have to like them," kind of thing. Like, otherwise, my mom
Oh
wants me to
my
be
god.
LGBT. There's a
Wow.
lot of I think Jonathan Jolly, I've covered his channel, his TikToks and stuff with
Mhm.
Edie and everything.
Mhm.
I think that is child abuse. It's a social transition as far as I can tell,
Yeah.
but it shouldn't be on
Yeah.
TikTok. You shouldn't be
No.
monetizing your children like that. If you are
No.
transitioning them, it's very weird,
Oh my god.
but at the same time, Edie, if they are trans, it doesn't seem like they are. When you look at the
No.
family, it looks
No.
like the older sister
No.
was getting all the attention and Edie just wanted the
Yes.
same attention.
Yes.
And so now Edie is getting the attention
That's right.
because Edie transitioned, and the transition was pushed by the father when the channel
Oh,
wasn't getting enough attention.
oh. Didn't the dad become non-binary or something? Is that the
Oh,
same one? There's another one where the little kid, I don't know if it's the same kid, but this is how gross it is. And then monetizing my partner is a documentary filmmaker, and she's has a couple pretty big documentaries out on Hulu and HBO and Netflix right now. But her one of her latest ones is on HBO, and it's called An Update on Our Family, and it's about the YouTube family dynamic. It's huge. I don't know if you all know about YouTube families, but they put their whole family on the internet and they make a shit ton of money off YouTube. Millions. They make millions of dollars. But I don't want to
oh
tell you the
yeah.
whole thing. If you have a chance to watch it, it's on HBO Max. It's called Update on Family, but it touches on this and the monetization of using your children. And, actually, the documentary is helping to change the laws on YouTube. Before, you could just put your kids on the internet. Did you know that? There's no, like, if you can't go and have your kid do a job without, like, having like a work permit, or kids at a certain age can't work. There's like laws, there's actual laws around having your kids work. But on the internet, there was no laws, and anyone could have their child on the internet and making money off of their kid without any sort of structure or understanding what that was. So it's scary,
Yeah.
really, that they're
Family
doing this with
channels are the
trans.
worst.
They're the worst, and that's what's happening to me with the trans space on the internet. And so, kids they make money on TikTok, and they make money on monetizing their space. And so, of course, these kids are going to be on the internet, like dancing and talking about their chest surgery and building I mean, some of these trans influencers have millions of followers and are really, on some level, they can't say what you and I are saying. Because if they say what you and I are saying, they're going to lose a whole boatload of their subscribers. And then I really believe some of these people know what they're saying is wrong. I do. In my heart, I believe that they know exactly what they're doing, but the money is worth more to them than the actual reality of what's happening. Because when you build your house on a false foundation, it will crumble. And a lot of this is built on a false foundation, and the whole thing is going to crumble and fall. And then what's going to happen? What's going to happen when all of these kids who cut their breasts off and took hormones and were actually just gay girls? And then I mean, really, this is a question I don't know if you can answer, but who's going to be responsible for this?
Joanna Olsen Kennedy. She said they could just get breast implants.
Oh my god. Oh my god. That hospital's down the street from my house. I'm
mean,
after
she
them.
did.
I'm after
She
I know.
did.
I
That
know.
was her response
I know.
to that question.
I know. It is actually mind blowing. We have such corrupt doctors. Doctors are on TikTok literally marketing their top surgeries. Look, let me tell you something, Skye. When we got top surgery back in the day, which it comes from the transsexual space of men, trans men created the term top surgery because it was about removing our breasts and getting surgery to have it looks like we're a man and we could take our chest off. That was the whole point of getting that surgery. Nobody could tell. You didn't want to have scars. You kept your shirt on until the scars went away. Now, every single trans person who is trans from female to male has these insane scars. And some of them aren't even putting their nipples back. I'm like, what?
Oh, yeah.
That's not transitioning. That's something else.
I'll do you a step further. So my wife is a cancer survivor. She had
Oh,
skin cancer.
I'm
Skin
sorry.
cancer, skin cancer in a
Yeah.
very private area.
Yeah.
And had we not caught it,
Right.
the doctor said she was probably about 3 months away from it being fatal.
Oh, no.
So she has wanted to get her breast removed or
Sure.
reduced.
Sure.
She has been trying to get them reduced or removed for 4 years now. The
Whoa.
insurance provider keeps saying, if you just transition, we'll do it.
What?
She doesn't want to do that.
I mean, I'm done. I'm
I'm like,
done.
wait a second. So you'll do it if you say you are trans,
What the hell?
but when you are a cancer survivor, we've had to do genetic testing to see if she has any of the I'm gonna get it wrong. I want to say
Yeah.
it's like Abzak Jewish.
Right. Right. Ash,
Um,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. It's Eastern European. Uh,
a
I
certain
can never say
section.
it either.
It's a
Ashkenazi.
certain
Is
yeah.
Ashkenazi?
So
Ashkenazi
yeah, 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 yeah.
Jewish. Yeah, yeah.
Certain type of
A
Jewish
gene. That's
genes.
right.
Yeah. If
That's
she
right.
has that, they'll cover it. She didn't.
Wow.
But she wouldn't
Wow.
have they won't cover it. So there and so then it's like, okay, so her insurance won't cover it. And I'm like, okay, so we're trying to get them reduced. It is outrageous that we're having to go through all of these hoops. But we could go and just go to the local tea eater and get them done with the big zipper scars, but we don't
Disgusting.
want that.
Of course not. Why would she want
We
that? Of course, you want to have. I don't have scars. Do you know how long ago I got my surgery done? 30 years ago. Like,
I was gonna
oh,
say probably about
28.
98.
Yeah, something like that. 20 something years ago. No scars. Zero.
Yeah.
That was the whole point, was to, it looks like if I take off my clothes mostly, cover I look like a dude. And that is the whole point of
Yeah.
transsexualism, is to make yourself. So why would you want those scars? This is part of this is part of what I'm trying to show the world. This is a body modification movement. It is an indoctrinated body modification movement. These kids are like using the scars to be a part of the trans, right? Like, it's like they're celebrating as if it's a good thing to have these scars and no nipples. Why would your wife ever want to have something
No.
that looks like that? It would make her feel insane. It would make her feel horrible about herself.
Yeah, and same with, trying to get a hysterectomy.
Oh my God. Same thing.
Mhm.
I hope everybody out there is hearing this. If you are an actual woman, right,
I
who needs to have medical situation done for your breast removal because of cancer, or hysterectomy because you're having problems there, you cannot just get that because you're not trans. So they put trans before actual female medical situation. This is unbelievable to me. What?
Yeah, I will do you one better. They still do the whole, you need to check with your husband before you get one. If you you if you're a young woman and you're not trans, they'll still try and talk you out of it. They will still try and talk you out of a hysterectomy if you're not trans. If you tell them you're
What?
trans, they'll do it no problem. But if you try and tell them you're not trans, they will still try and talk you out of the hysterectomy, saying you'll regret it, you're going to
Wow,
want children
just
later.
wow,
So
just wow.
basically, the minute you say you're trans,
Yeah,
you're no longer they no longer
right,
care. They're like, all right, fine.
right,
But if
right,
if if they see that you're
right,
not trans, then
right.
it's like, well, you're only good for reproduction, so we wanna make sure that you can still reproduce,
I mean, I'm
and that's all it
laughing.
is.
It's
This
actually
no, it's
insanity.
disgusting, and this is the type of ingrained misogyny that I see, and this is the stuff that I wanna
That's right.
point out, and
Thank you. Thank
I'm
you.
like, "Why is no one talking about this stuff?"
Oh
And
my
I'm like,
God. Right.
I'm seeing it. If I'm seeing it, I have to know that
That's right.
actual women are out here screaming about it.
Wow.
And I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Ladies, I am so sorry that this is happening.
Right. That's right.
I
Thank
wish
you.
there was more that I could do to help
Well, you
get the
are.
word
You're
out.
literally, you just did it, because this will get to somebody else who will get to somebody else. That's how it works, people. That's why YouTube tries to stop me from saying things. That's why, like, the demonetization is going to stop me. Are you kidding me? It's not about money. Okay. Money helps. I'm not going to lie. Of course it does. It helps to build the channel. I can do all these great things, but it is not the end all be all. And that's the problem with what also has become this trans space. It's monetized when we have people like Dylan Mulvaney and Jeffrey Marsh and all of these high big deal profile trans people making so much money off of the identity of trans. And then you have people like us who are like, hey, wait a minute, that's not really what's happening. And then they stomp on us. If people in the world are starting to see what we're saying, and that's why it is important that somebody like Skye steps up. I'm coming from a different space, but when Skye and I get together as a transsexual woman and a transsexual man, and we say, wait a minute, this is not, because we're coming to it from different angles, right? Like, I could say things from this angle, and the majority of the voices, I don't know if you know this or see this, I'm sure you do, Skye, that the majority of the pushing and the agenda and the ideology is coming from trans women. It is actually coming from trans women.
That trans women, misguided activists, people who use the queer label,
Oh God.
um,
Oh,
and a lot of
sick.
people who back in the day we would have labeled as cross-dressers or transvestites
That's
who
right.
would not have been included in the umbrella
That's right.
because I think a lot of what's happened is they wanted what we had and they couldn't have it,
Yes.
and
Yes.
they figured out how to get around it
That's
so they could have what we had, even though we didn't want what we had.
right. Genius.
So,
I know. What do
like,
they want? Literally, what do they want? Because I'm going to
I
tell, and I keep saying it, this isn't fun. I would have much rather been born a dude. Let me tell you, man, I don't
I
want to be trans. And I don't think this is
I
fun and cool
I
and
would not
hip.
have wished this on my worst enemy.
That's
I'm sorry. I would not have wished being what I deal with. I would not have wished on my worst enemy
right
because
on. Right on.
it's not no. No,
And
thank
putting
you.
it on children. Now they're putting it on children. They are using children to do the dirty work. That's the thing. Children are so easily indoctrinated into stuff. Children are so easily malleable to sort of do this thing. Oh, when they say that, they're being transphobic. And that you can just watch all the talking points being put into those kids' heads and coming after people like me and you who did it such a long time ago as if we're the enemy of the trans community.
Do you know what this reminds me of? Do you remember uh Westboro Baptist?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Do you remember
That's
when they had
right.
the kids out there with the
That's
signs?
right.
God hates Fs.
That's right.
Right? They're out there.
Mhm, mhm. Yep,
God loves dead soldiers. That all
yep,
that stuff.
yep,
This
yep.
this is the flip of that.
Great point.
This because the you had the conservative Christians that were out there, and they were the extreme, and they were just
Great
so
point.
vitriolic and just turned so many people against religion that they
Yes,
brainwashed an entire generation against
that's right.
it.
Yep,
This is what these activists are doing. They're going to
great point.
brainwash an entire generation
Yeah,
against LGBTQ, and they
that's
don't
right.
even realize it.
No, they don't.
And they're doing it through the children. And the
That's right.
reason that they don't even realize it is that these people who are pushing this agenda onto the children
Mhm.
are living vicariously because
I
they
know.
have this fantasy that their lives would have been better had they been
Yes.
medicalized as children. And that's just not true. They
It's
can't
not.
prove it.
Nope.
The data doesn't bear that out. The
Yep,
science doesn't bear that out.
that's right. Well,
It's
I
just
I
not
proved it.
contained.
I said I'm not going to be the one saying that because, in my opinion, so what I did is I got actual young people who took puberty blockers, who did surgery on my. You can watch it on my podcast on my other channel. And actually, I think the interviews here I did like 2 or 3 young people who took puberty blockers at 10 years old, 11 years old. Then they went on to cross sex hormones. Then they had surgery, and now at 25, they wish they never did it. So I actually interviewed people who are put on those goddamn things, destroyed their body. One of them, Brianna, no, not Brianna, I forgot. Bree something. I'm sorry, I apologize, but it's on here. And she went on at 25. She said, I wish they would have just left me alone because I really think I'm just a gay man. She's never experienced sex. She's never had sexual feelings. That's the other thing those puberty blockers does. It desexualizes these children. So she says, I've never even felt attracted to anybody. At 25, she's like, I really believe I would have just been a gay, feminine man. I cried during the whole interview. It was horrifying.
I know quite a few trans
Yes.
people who have told me in private. They will never say it publicly, but they have
Yeah.
told me in private
Yeah.
that they wish they never had transitioned
God.
because the reason they did it was not the reason they thought it was.
Yes.
They thought at the time, and but with time comes clarity. And I think that's the other
Sure.
thing,
Great.
circling all the way back to the start of the conversation with the younger
Great.
generation.
Yes.
We've had time
Yes.
to process.
Yes.
The younger kids, the ones that are like you and I,
Yes.
when they get more years under their
I
belt,
know.
they'll come to understand and they'll be
That's
where
right.
we're at.
I
The
know.
ones that are not like us, they
Yes.
will still be in the exact same place,
Yes.
bitter and angry. But the
Yes.
ones that are like us, they'll go from being bitter and angry
God.
to being rational and frustrated by the same people being bitter and angry
I
because
know.
they'll see it's not making anything any better.
That just makes me want to cry. I swear, I'm a sensitive. I cry all the time on my channel. I think you know because I can't take it. I actually can't take it. Thank you for that. Thank you, Monolithic. You know, it just really just makes me feel so sick to my stomach when we have a community that does not represent you and I, but has a louder voice than you and I. And I don't care when an adult does, which I think you feel the same way. Who cares? We don't care. But how dare you put a child? And to me, even an 18-year-old Skye is a child. I just can't imagine at 18 years old, just cutting my breasts off and just doing this thing that thinks it's going to change. You said such a great, profound thing. You said, with time comes clarity. And this is the thing that, do you remember when you were younger, you didn't want to listen to the old people. You just didn't want to, not that you're old, but you know what I mean? Like, you just don't want to listen to the older generation because they're old and they don't know things and they don't want to move on with the times. But that's a very profound thing you said there.
I mean, when you're 18, you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof.
Yep.
No one can stop you.
Yep.
When you're 40, you're looking at those kids and you're like, they're a bunch of idiots.
I know. It's just like, if it was just clothes, if it was just social transitioning, if it was just, playing around with stuff and drawing a mustache, which I did as a youngster, put a mustache and beard on with mom's mascara or the pen thing that you do with the eyebrow. Like, I would just play around with that gender stuff. If it was just that, I don't think any of us would have an issue with it in any way, shape, or form. But they've taken it to such the next level that it's absurd that it's being pushed so heavily. And that's why I think it's very, very money based, pharmaceutical and doctors and all of that, because there's no other reason why anybody would want to do this to children unless it was money based. Yeah.
Profit motive for sure.
Profit. So, well, gosh, an hour. I could speak to you for 10 hours. Seriously.
I was going to say we could probably go for another hour.
We literally could. But I'm going to bring you back on because everybody loves you so much. Maybe you could just become a regular guest on some of my lives, or
I have no problem with that.
That would be great. And please follow Scott. What's your channel again? Just say
it's Skye Vitiritti. It's in the
Can one of the admins, Lisa or Ann, would you mind putting that in the chat for me real quick? And to the people out there, I put it on the description of this video, so you'll see it right there. If you guys, really, it would mean a lot to me if you helped build her channel and follow her. She's a very big important part of this fight for the children, and I know you all care about the kids as I do. And this is how we're gonna I believe we're gonna win the fight, is by really teaming up with each other and helping each other grow our platforms and get our voices out there. And so with that, I just want to let you know that I have a video coming out at 2:00, and I'll be in the live chat, and it's another insane. Oh my God, I'm just tearing apart TikTok because I can't take it anymore. And sometimes I need to laugh so I don't cry about this whole thing. But do you have any last things you want to say, Skye, before we head out?
I'm on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and I've made it my personal goal to reach it by the end of this month. So if you guys can help me get there, I would appreciate it. Also, YouTube, do not demonetize this stream. I'd appreciate that. And I'll catch y'all in the next one.
Great. So there's her channel. That's it. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for showing up. Thanks everybody for supporting the channel and supporting Skye and helping us get our message out there. And we care about these kids. And remember, without elders like us really pushing this and helping to for people to understand, these kids will get sucked into this, and it's just not going to be a good outcome. It just is not. So with that, have a beautiful rest of your day. I'll see you guys 2:00 on the next one.